Hello bibliophiles, and welcome back to Blatantly Bookish. I'm Marissa, and today I'm here to talk about my most exciting recent literary adventure, and that was my trip to Louisa May Alcott's Orchard House up in Concord, Massachusetts. I was visiting friends in Boston, and one of my friends who knows I love literature suggested that we take a trip to Concord. He has a car, and I had such a great time, you guys. So for those of you who don't know, Orchard House, well, first let's start off with Louisa May Alcott. She wrote Little Women, which if you have not read or have not heard of, just shut off the video and you should go check that out because I highly recommend it. I actually reread it this past year. It's just such a lovely coming of age story of four sisters. The story itself is based on Louisa May Alcott's life and the lives of her sisters. It basically takes place in Orchard House. So Orchard House is just nestled in this area of literary brilliance in the mid 1800s, early to mid 1800s. Orchard House is right down the road from Nathaniel Hawthorne's house and Ralph Waldo Emerson's house, as well as, I'm not sure if it's Thoreau's house or just Walden Pond is very close by. But anyway, all of those figures featured prominently in Louisa May Alcott's life and in the lives of the Alcotts in general. Her family was highly steeped in the Transcendentalist movement that was going on in that time period. It was really unfortunate that I didn't get to visit some of these other literary figures' houses, but honestly, we were very tuckered out after Louisa May Alcott's house, and I am not as big a fan of Emerson and Hawthorne as I am of Louisa May Alcott. So anyway, I was saying that her parents and the society that she was in general were highly steeped in Transcendentalism, which is a movement in the time period about the inherent goodness of people and nature. It's sort of a spin-off of the British Romanticism, but it also takes some of its inspiration from Eastern beliefs like Hinduism. It's a belief that society and its institutions have corrupted the purity of the individual, and the faith that people at their best are truly self-reliant and independent. And so it's about the power of the individual and personal freedoms. And as I said, you can really see how these ideas of Transcendentalism made their way into Louisa May Alcott's life, her works, her writing, and it's really interesting to think about. So I had such a wonderful time exploring Louisa May Alcott's house, and it really felt like I was just a part of history being there and getting to see where she would be, where she wrote Little Women, and all sorts of really entertaining things. I'll talk more about them. But it was really interesting. 80% of the items in the house and the house itself was original, and they tried to make the wallpapers even as original as possible or replicas of the original. It was truly a real treat. So some of the things that actually surprised me a little bit about the tour were the amount of things I learned about Louisa May Alcott's writing. I really only know her as the author of Little Women, and I feel like most people really only know her as the author of Little Women. But she actually wrote quite a few other works. I believe they said on the tour that she wrote 29 other works. So some other works that I definitely want to check out that I was only made aware of because of this little trip I took are Moods, Eight Cousins, Jack and Jill, Under the Lilacs, and Hospital Sketches. Hospital Sketches, so the first ones I just mentioned are works of fiction that I don't really know much about, but that I do know you can download for free on Kindle, and I have done so, and I'm excited to read them. But Hospital Sketches is about Louisa May Alcott's experience as a Civil War nurse in D.C. She went to D.C. for about 6 weeks and was a Civil War nurse, so that would be really interesting to hear her perspectives on the Civil War and on everything she saw and must have done. And I don't really know much about that point in her life. They didn't really discuss that in too much detail on the tour, so it would be exciting to hear about it in her own words. And then another one that she wrote that is not fiction is Transcendental Oats, which is all about her influences from Transcendentalism and Emerson and Thoreau and Hawthorne. So that would also be really interesting to read, and perhaps I'd even get a better understanding of Transcendentalism and of how it was incorporated into her life. It was so special getting to see her bedroom, though. That was one of my favorite rooms. It was where she wrote Little Women, and you could see the very desk she must have sat at, and in the cabinets there were her collection of books. So there were some of her own books that were published in her time period that she had. Also predominantly featured were Dickens and Goethe. So it was really exciting to see what Louisa May Alcott would have read and what she had in her personal library. And then they had little pieces of paper with her very own handwriting on them, and all of these little meaningful quotes that I feel like I've heard before, but now when I try and look them up, I can't seem to place where I've seen them. I don't think that they're her original quotes, but I could be wrong about that. At first I thought one of them may have been Dickinson, but I'm not sure that I'm correct about that either. If I could take pictures at the site, I would have taken pictures and looked them up in the future, but of course I wasn't allowed to do that, which really saddens me. But it was amazing to see words about writing in her own handwriting. One of the aspects, though, that I found a little frustrating about the tour was it was really hard to discern when the tour guide was talking about the actual Alcott sisters and when she was talking about the characters of Little Women, because some of the names are shared. Beth and Elizabeth are basically the same character, and they do have the same fate. I was so entrenched in looking at all of the Alcott's things, the china, the couches, the silverware, the old stove, the letters, the artwork. I was just so immersed that it was hard to focus entirely on what the tour guide was saying. But also, I'm pretty sure that the tour guide kept referring to the youngest daughter, whose name is actually Abigail May, as either May or Amy or the real Amy, or I'm pretty sure sometimes she just called her Amy. And that was remarkably confusing to follow. Speaking of Amy, she was actually my favorite part of the tour. Abigail May Alcott was a prolific artist, and I feel like society has pretty much forgotten that fact. I mean, Amy, of course, is quite the artist, or becomes quite the artist in Little Women, traveling to Paris, and Abigail May also traveled to Paris, but I just don't think we realized how wonderful of an artist she was. The house is just covered in her artwork. Just so many different ranges of style, and she's just so accomplished as an artist. Her bedroom is covered in these childhood pencil drawings that have been preserved behind panels of like plexiglass. And Louisa May Alcott's room, she has these lilies is the wrong word. Lilies of the valley? I'll insert a picture of the appropriate flower here because clearly I am blanking on my flower names right now. But she has this gorgeous mural of those there. She did beautiful copies of Turner's work. I'll insert a Turner here. She was just an absolutely amazing artist. Why is it that we do not study her or barely even know about her unless we're thinking and learning about Louisa May Alcott? I have no idea, and that is just terrible. She actually taught Daniel Chester French, who was the artist who created the Lincoln Memorial that sits in Washington, D.C. today, and he actually created that monument with Amy, I keep calling her Amy, with Abigail May's sculpture tools, and as a tribute to her, he apparently has put them in the back of the monument itself. So those are just some cool tidbits I picked up on the tour that were particularly amazing, and I just don't think that Abigail May is as celebrated an artist as she should be. She was friends with Mary Cassatt in Paris, and the tour guide told this anecdote about how her work was actually chosen over Mary Cassatt's for some salon or other in Paris. So I don't know why I know about Mary Cassatt, but I do not know about Abigail May. But now I do, and hopefully people start looking at her work because it is absolutely gorgeous, and you should travel to Orchard House just if you're a fan of artwork, because seeing her artwork all over the house is delightful. It's a special treat. So most of all, my tour of Orchard House made me want to look up some other works, either by Louisa May Alcott, certainly the ones I mentioned before, or to look up other works about her, and also her journals. I think those would be really interesting to read as well. And I'll link a book that I kind of want to purchase because I can't find it in my library of her journals. I'll link that down below so you can check it out. But there's also another book I want to read, and it's a biography of Louisa May Alcott. It was published in 2007, and that's Eden's Outcasts. And it seems really interesting because it's about the relationship between Bronson Alcott, which is Louisa May Alcott's father, and Louisa, and how they didn't always see eye to eye, and sort of their relationship is apparently fleshed out really, really well in that book. So if you've read that book, I'd be really curious to hear what you thought about it, if you think it's worth reading, and if you think it sheds an interesting light onto Louisa May Alcott's life. Also, I've heard that there is a modern adaptation of Little Women, like a 2018 miniseries that was on PBS that I really want to check out, but I have to figure out how I can access that. I'm not sure at the moment where I can see it. Maybe they still have episodes on PBS, but that is something that I will have to check out. Have you either been to Orchard House? Have you seen the new miniseries I'm talking about? Have you read any other Louisa May Alcott works that are not Little Women? I would be really interested to hear what you think of any of those things down below. And also, since I was not allowed to take pictures inside the museum, I will link to the Orchard House website down below, which is full of interesting information, and tells you how you can go on a tour yourself if you happen to be anywhere near the area. And also, if you cannot go on a tour, they have a virtual tour where they have pictures of all of the rooms, which I highly recommend taking a look at. So that's all for now. I'm looking forward to hearing your comments on this one in the comment section down below, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!